Welcome to the Smart Publishing Impact Series, where we show you how to turn your expertise into a book that actually drives results. I'm Jonathan Lautermilch, CEO of Smart Publishing.
And I'm Renée Lautermilch, Chief Editor of Smart Publishing. This is the podcast for business owners, coaches, and professionals who don't just want to be authors. They want to use a book to build authority, attract clients, and create real opportunities.
Each week, we break down what actually works when it comes to writing, publishing, and leveraging a book the right way. Sometimes it's just us pulling back the curtain on our process. Other times we're joined by authors, industry experts, sharing how they've used a book to grow their business. If you've ever thought about writing a book, or you already have one and want it to do more for you, you're in the right place. Let's get into it.
Hello, and I think welcome to another episode of the Smart Publishing Impact Series. For those of you who've not been in the room with us, Descript, our lovely recording platform, has kicked us out 3-4 times in a row when I hit the record button. So we are now praying that technology would behave and we don't do all this work and record a session.
You know what it is? It's
I'm
the
giving it to
devil
God.
trying to stop us from getting this best helper out there, because we've got a spiritual best helper we're about to introduce on this podcast today. That's what it is. It's the devil.
Something. It is a Monday up in here at Smart Publishing. So welcome to episode 70 of the Smart Publishing Impact Series. As you know, I'm your co-host, Renée Lautermilch, Chief Editor at Smart Publishing, and I'm joined by my co-conspirator / co-host, Jonathan Lautermilch. Say hi to the people.
Hello, everyone.
And we have a special guest episode for you guys today with Matthew Jenkins, author of the upcoming release, Beat Up by God. And before I hold the mic on my end and hand it over to Matthew, I just want to do a little description of him and his forthcoming title. So Matthew Jenkins, he's a father and a man of faith whose journey through pain, loss, and renewal has deepened his understanding of God's grace. After battling cancer, enduring personal trials, and wrestling with feelings of abandonment by God, Matthew discovered that suffering can be a sacred path to redemption. Out of that journey came his forthcoming title, which releases tomorrow. No, not tomorrow. August 4th. Yes, August 4th. Beat Up by God, Finding Faith When Life Feels Like It's Falling Apart. It's a raw and honest testimony written to help believers who feel forgotten or broken to see that God's hand is still at work, especially in the hardest seasons. He combines transparency, scripture, and hope to remind readers that even when life feels unbearable, God's love remains unshakable. He lives in Delaware and is active in his local community church, where he encourages others to find purpose through their pain. So a very sort of Job, experience and style there for people who are just really going through it, or those of you who know someone who's going through it. So like I said, the book is a personal testimony. One of the really great things about the book as well is it has a complete small group study guide that is included within it. It has leader notes, discussion questions, worship suggestions for each chapter. So it makes the book equally suited for individual reading, but group settings as well, like ministries, men's ministries, grief support environments, church discipleship programs. So really, really excited to partner on this with Matthew. And Matthew, I will hand it over to you to say hi to our listeners.
Hi, I'm Matthew. I'm excited to be here.
Thanks for joining us, Matthew. Jonathan is going to be the one with the hard-hitting questions. Yeah. So, Jonathan.
Matthew, I'm so fired up to have you on this show. You want to know why? Because out of all of our publishing partners, every time I think of you, I just think of an onion. I think of an onion because there are so many layers to the onion, and the only way you get to the core is by just going deeper and deeper and deeper. And I make that joke because for y'all listening, I met Matthew when I was doing a roundtable call on LinkedIn, just helping different authors with kind of their book concepts and questions and Q&A. And I knew immediately when I met Matthew, I was like, dude, there's a lot more to this guy, but he's going to give you just enough information to go to the next step. But if you keep digging, Matthew is an amazing human being. He's got an amazing story, and I just have fun just getting to know Matthew more and more and more as we work together. And then especially on today's episode, I get to ask you even more questions, Matthew, so we're going to peel back the onion layers today, my friend. So as we go through this, man, I think like the best place to start, and this is why I always ask this question as we do these episodes with our publishing partners, is, what was really at the core of like why you wrote your book? So what I want to know from you, Matthew, was what was happening in your life when you decided that you had to write this book? And once again, very bold title of Beat Up by God. So I'd like to know behind the scenes, what was going on that just inspired you to write this book?
Yeah, so when I started writing it, it was actually not intended to be a book. It was just meant to be a cathartic exercise, kind of like a journal, but a little bit more in depth, walk through the healing process that I was going through. And as I was writing, I realized that it really could help other people, and that I wanted to get it out there. But I decided to write the book. I was spending a week in a mental hospital after an incident where I put a gun to my head. I was going through marriage separation, chronic illness, chronic pain. I'd lost my sister at the age of 39 a year prior, job losses. All this stuff came crashing down all at once, and I'd lost hope, and I knew where I was going when the Lord calls me home, and I was ready to be in heaven instead of on earth, and I was going to circumvent God's timing. But as I was in the mental hospital, that began my healing process, and I told my mom the day that I put the gun to my head that I was tired of feeling beat up by God, and that's where the title came from.
Dude, God bless you, man. You know what? So what was it during that process that you realized that this was actually a book that could help other people? Because I totally relate that you wrote this for yourself to heal and go through, but what was that aha moment that like this is actually something that could help other people?
When I realized how much scripture I was putting into it, the thoughts that were coming out, just like I said, as I was writing it, it was like it struck me. There was not one point that I realized this should be a book and be available to other people. It was a gradual thing that the more I wrote, the more I went, this should be a book.
Isn't that beautiful how God met you where you're at and then used that pain for purpose?
Yeah, it
Dude,
is.
that's magical, man. Dude, oh God, but this is going to be such a best helper for so many people, man. So, well, let's get into this question then as we're thinking about this. Obviously, this was very difficult, I'm sure, for you to write, right? Like you're living in the moment. You got a lot of things coming at you, and then once again, once you had the realization that like, hey, this actually help other people, was there any step of this process you've gone through where you're like, I can't do this, I can't finish this, that almost stopped you from writing the book?
So I wrote the introduction and the first four chapters, and then 2 days later, after I finished writing chapter four, I got served with divorce papers. And I was still praying for healing and reconciliation in the marriage. And so it took me from June to October where I didn't write at all.
I'm sure that was immensely distracting to have that happen. That's why I tell Renee all the time, only way out this family is in a box. Because I already know I couldn't handle it, dude. So to have you go through that and then still finish with this is just astounding. So what helped you push through that then?
When I started focusing on the fact that I was writing it for someone else instead of just for me, and it was something that I wanted to do, not even thinking about how many people would or wouldn't read it. It was something that I thought would be cool to say that I wrote a book. And then if some people happen to read it and get benefit from it, that was kind of secondary, but it became kind of this goal of mine to get a book out there, and I knew I had the topic, and so I figured why not finish it.
Dude, you know what's funny? And Renee, I want you to chime in on this. We've worked with a lot of people over the years, right? And we've met even more, right? That had these conversations with. And I'll say one reoccurring theme to everyone that's actually like written a book and then been successful with it moving forward have always had a spirit of it's not about me.
Yep.
It's about who this book is for. So Renee, if you want to chime in on that, I know you and I have talked about this a lot.
I was just thinking we literally had this exact comment from Dr. Karina Tan in last week's episode where it just, and I think we've had it with Jason Powell as well. And it is the common theme. And I really want our listeners who have not yet released a book, who are listening to this, thinking about writing a book, in the process of writing a book. You've already had the manuscript for years, but you haven't released it. I really, really, really want you to hear what Matthew said, because that is the common thread amongst all these authors who have released their book or are in the process of releasing their book, is they switched the mindset from what will people think about me? What will my people say about me? People aren't going to like my book. They're going to think I'm this. They're going to think I'm that, or nobody's going to care. To I need to help people. Who do I need to help with this? Who can this impact? If this even impacts X amount of people, it will be worth it. And so that switch from me to you, or to the other person, to the reader, that switch is everything in following through and getting it out there. So I'd love to hear you say that, Matthew.
Yeah, man. We want to honor you for that. You figured that out all by yourself, man. That's awesome. Cool, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, so let me ask you, Matthew, so you did a lot of this work before you came into contact in what we do. So I'd like to ask you, like, what made you decide to work with a publisher on this versus just, self-publishing and putting it out on your own?
Yeah, so I thought about self-publishing it, but I didn't like the layout or the cover or anything that I've come up with, and I really thought that it could help more people. And I use that language now that I've met you, Jonathan, but I didn't have that language necessarily in my mind when I was looking for a publisher, but I thought it could help more people if it went through a professional revision and editing and a better cover, because I was just going to use a cover from Amazon that was really dull and boring, just not really catchy. Yeah. And so yeah, I was grateful when you reached out and we connected on LinkedIn and learned about what you did. So
yeah, Renee's over there flexing over there. Look at that cover.
It's beautiful. It's a stunning cover, just absolutely stunning. Hopefully this makes its way into one of our reels so that people can see it. But those of you watching on YouTube, it's a beautiful book inside and out.
Yeah, and Matthew, I appreciate that, man. And I asked that question because as you've experienced, there's a lot of moving parts with creating a book, publishing it, marketing it, to what you're going to be doing here soon is how you're going to continue to use this book to be a best helper for people. And people come in and work with us for all different, sorts of reasons as they come through that. So I always like to ask that question, just go, for you specifically, what was it that helped you go through that process? And once again, for those of y'all listening, you may want help with all of it. You may help with some of it, but I will tell you this, there's a reason why dentists don't clean their own teeth at the end of the day, right? You need to have someone that's not emotionally attached to the work that can come in and constructively provide that feedback so that you can have that professional outside look, so that you're not getting too close and too lost in the forest where you're missing the trees at the end of the day. And that's why even with us, Renee, like we hire other outside people for things that we could do ourselves, but sometimes we're too close to it to view it objectively at the end of the day, right? So I think that's great, though. So let me ask you this, Matthew. Who is this book specifically for, and how is it going to make their life better?
So I envision that the book is for the bruised believer primarily. The
bruised believer.
I was going to church. I was singing the songs. I was doing all the steps, and yet I still had this mental health crisis. and this breakdown. And I never lost my faith, thankfully. I never walked away from the church. A lot of people might have, and I don't say that to brag. It just I did just never have walked away from the church. It's always been an important part of my life. But it would have also been very easy, just like I put a gun to my head, it could have been just as easy to walk away from the church. Arguably easier because the consequences are less severe. Um, that's who I think it's for primarily. I think anyone who reads it will get something from it, but it's really for the people who know the verses, that go to church and but still feel helpless and hopeless.
Church hurt's hard, man. I actually had church hurt from when I was a kid, and that was why I stepped away. And then once again, I went to a Catholic high school and knew all the things, but I wasn't living my life that way at all. And for the longest time, I didn't. It wasn't until, I had an encounter through a mastermind where I met someone that inspired me to want to get back into that. And that's where, I got with Renée, and Renée had already been wanting to go back, but I wasn't ready to go back yet. But in that moment, that was what inspired us to get back in there. And I think that was like 6-7 years ago, something like that. And then once again, we went to a church where we had an opportunity where we could have let that experience cause us to not go anymore. But once again, I think for me and Renée, feel free to chime in on this. It wasn't about the act of just checking a box to show up, right? To go, hey, I went to church, I'm a good Christian. It was because me and Renée are spiritually hungry. Like we want to know the word better, and more importantly, we want to know what does it look like to apply in your life, and then what is the fruit that can bear from that. And I think one of the biggest realizations for me, Matthew, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on this as well, is I used to view the Bible as like things you can't do and you'll be punished, like more like a jail, right? Don't do these fun things or you'll go to hell. It wasn't until I realized that that's actually the playbook for having your best life on this side of eternity. Is these aren't to happen to you, they're for you to follow, so that you can have an awesome life on this side. And that was one of the big shifts that helped me really lean in and embrace, and not just go to church to check a box, but to actually go, how do I apply this in my life? And once again, I'll kick it to you two, any additional thoughts you want to add on that.
Yeah, I had definitely fallen into that rut of going to church to check the box. It was good. Like I said, I was singing the songs, and I knew I loved God, but I would have rather been asleep most Sundays. I now actually have a quiet time of 45 minutes roughly every day, and that came out of that journey that also led to the book. Interestingly enough, I would have told you that a year ago that the worst book in the Bible was Leviticus because of all the rules. I've realized I don't like reading prophecy more. Prophecy's even harder to understand. At least I can understand the do's and don'ts of Leviticus, but prophecy is a big steak versus the milk that they talk about in Corinthians, or one of Paul's letters.
It's funny, when I was going through Leviticus, Renée goes, "Get ready."
There's some. Well, yeah. I mean, there's some dull parts in there, but there's some raunchy parts in there too. So
a lot of name dropping. I was like, Renée, I'm like, they're losing me with like all the name dropping.
Numbers too. Yeah, numbers is yeah. I have a question, Matthew, because I feel like it sort of sits central to your book and central to where, I don't know, our culture is, and where a lot of people struggle in the faith is your testimony is, like I said when we were starting, it's this real like Job style, testimony where it's like, here's a man who just sort of gets everything stripped away and is just in this rough place, but refuses to, as his wife tries to get him to do, to curse God's name and die. Our culture is so sort of wrapped up in this prosperity gospel, and that's not just like, hey, pray and get money. It's also like, it's the idea that like God is this genie and you're praying to get all these positive things, and if you don't get these positive things, then something's wrong with God or something's wrong with you. But we miss all these stories in the Bible. Look at all the prophets. Look at Job. Look at Paul. Like, look at every single disciple. None of these folks had easy lives. They all went through immense pain and suffering, and so, how do you, having been through what you've been through, how do you what do you say to the believer who isn't getting the things that they're praying for, um, but still has so many blessings in life, and is at this point to where they feel like God's not listening and they want to give up on God and their faith?
Yeah, I wrestle with that a lot in the book because it was something I was wrestling with a lot. And I forget the reference of the verse, but it says that we will have
Yeah.
troubles in this life. It actually promises the opposite of a good life. So for the prosperity gospel, there's literally a verse that is the opposite of that and says that you will have troubles in this life. Um, I would say take small steps back towards God. Um, it might be 1 minute of prayer because that's all you have the strength for. It might be, and I said this in the book, it might be going to church and just standing there during worship but listening, because you don't have the strength to actually sing the songs because you don't feel like they mean it. Just one step after the next, and God will bring you back. The Psalm says that His word is a light unto our feet. the it's one step at a time that he gives us light for. It's not this broad spotlight that gives us the whole path that's illuminated. It's literally that next step that we get the light for.
Mm, that's good. That's real good. Thank you. Okay, Jonathan, I had to jump in there. That
No,
was my burning
no,
question.
no, that was great. And that was actually the next question I was going to ask is what's the one, big thing that you want people to take away from this? And dude, I think you just nailed it on the head right there. Is just take that one step that closer to God and not focus on the spotlight, focus on that one focal point. And it's funny, Renee, if you remember the service we had a couple weeks ago, and you're well more biblically versed than I am. I kind of just show up and I'm like, give me the 30,000-foot view, and you know all the details, right? Which is why I appreciate you as my best helper just in life. But the thing that stood out to me in that service was, he was talking about the Israelites making this crazy trek across, Egypt to the promised land, and how God gave them specific orders to, just get enough food for today. Don't worry about tomorrow. Just get for today. Only on Friday will you double up because you're going to take Saturday off. And how a lot of the Israelites during that time would get as much as they could because of the fear of the scarcity of not having what they needed tomorrow. And funny enough, those that did that, their food would spoil. They would literally have maggots in the food the next day, right? And the whole principle that I took away from that, once again, Renee, I'd like to hear from you and hear what you took away from it, was God's going to provide what you need, whatever the season is, right? Sometimes it's as abundant, sometimes it's just enough, but He's always going to provide as long as you're taking that next step, whatever that is, right? So it just made me think of that, Matthew, as you just shared about taking that step back to God. But Renee, I'd love to hear your thoughts you may have heard something completely different than I heard in that service.
No, I think that was it. I think it's distilling exactly what Matthew was saying is about, God's illuminating that next step, and our job is having the faith to just take that step, because God can't take that step for us. We are with free will, right? Um, and so Matthew, just it feels to me like you're continuing to go to church was always just that next step. You didn't always have the energy, but you still gave yourself and gave God something to work with at the end of the day.
Yeah, it really was. I looked forward to church though after a certain point of time. Once a switch flipped, it wasn't just something to do. That was it was home, and I felt I looked forward to Sunday. It was one of the things on my calendar that I looked forward to get me through the week when I was having a particularly hard week. Because during all this, like I only got to see my kids for an hour a week, and so I was living in my house by myself, and but I had this family at church, so I looked forward every week to be able to get a hug, things that are simple like that, where because I wasn't getting hugs or there was no physical connection at home.
Well, Matthew, you just helped me have a shift with that. Because in full transparency, the one part I dislike the most about church as an introvert, and I'm sure you can relate to this to some degree, is the turn and greet someone part. I've actually tried this strategically. Like, I've mapped it out, bro. I've looked at, okay, at this time, after this hymn, they do that part. How do we get in right after that part? and that's just me, because, man, I'm an introvert, and I know it's hard for people to see that because I have to, like, turn it on for what I'm doing. But, man, my love language is leave me alone. I just want to sit there and I want to absorb. But hearing that from you, like, dude, that shifts me, man, because it ain't about me. There might be a person during that service that needed that greeting from me. They go do that. So thank you for sharing that, man. It still doesn't change how I feel, but it definitely changes my willingness to show up and output a little bit better.
It's the shift from me to what does someone else need? That's the same as the book.
Dang it, Matthew. I got to show up for the meet and greets now. Dang it. I have been fine-tuning when I went. Like, I'm telling you, I had down to a science, man. I go to Renee, go, perfect. Like, we literally walk in as they were doing it. And now we got to show up so we can do the meet and greet so we can give people the love that they need. God bless it. All right. All right. So let me ask you this, man. What's the big vision? Like, once again, obviously, like, we talked about what we want people to take from this, but I want you to zoom out like 30,000 foot view. What is the impact that you're striving for this book to happen on a big scale?
It's going to sound cliche, but I really just want God to use it however he sees fit. I don't completely know what that looks like yet. I want it to get into as many hands that need it and really help people that are struggling like I was. So,
it's funny. Renee, you can talk on this. Carter Check, one of our chaplains, we've got quite a few we've assembled. And once again, we've done zero marketing towards this thing. They just keep finding us and we just keep hitting it off, right? And for us, obviously, anything we can do that's going to expand the kingdom of God, like it's a pretty easy yes for us as we go through that. Anyway, I asked him the same thing when he wrote his first book, Healing in the Wild, which is based on his moral injury thesis. And he said the same thing to me. Same thing. And at the time, I was like, okay, man. Like, well, I'd like to get more specific as we go through that, but I definitely appreciate and honor that. Funny enough, a year later, after talking about his book and doing the same things, a company found him on LinkedIn, bought a bunch of copies for their company, invited him to 2 different retreats/workshops, which he went on his own dime for just to help people. And that ended up turning into an opportunity where the president of that company pulled him in personally and now they're doing a deal where they're going to integrate his entire thesis into the first responder certification program across the whole nation. And then I asked him, how'd you do that? Cool. He goes, God. And I was like, Carter, you got to give me more specifics, buddy. Like, I absolutely, God, but there's probably some details in the middle that we can share and extract from that experience to maybe give people a little bit of a roadmap of how you got there.
It all started with a LinkedIn article, if we want to get down to it. It was a LinkedIn article. They looked at the article. He mentioned his book. They found the book. They bought the book. So,
and I share that with you, Matthew, because once again, I'm not going to go into all his details of what that's going to amount to financially for him, but in Carter's thick Oklahoma accent, a lot what that turned into. And once again, this is someone that he just was enthusiastic about going, I need to go share this with people. Like he's telling me on flights he was on, talking to people just randomly, and then that created someone that got his book translated in Arabic. So now it's being spread out across the Middle East and helping evangelize people over there. So I just want to share that with you, brother, because great things can come from a, like you said, general cliche thing to say, but it's the absolute truth as you go through that process, man. So I have no doubts that you're going to do great and wonderful things with this book, which is why I'm honored, and Renée is honored as well, to help be your publishers on this, dude. Once again, it's going to be a spiritual best helper for sure. So I got a publishing question for you. What surprised you the most about working with the publisher? Because I'm sure you came in, you're like, I've never worked with a publisher. I don't even know what to expect as I go through this. What was the thing that surprised you the most about this process so far?
Honestly, you guys made it really easy. I don't know that I expected it to be difficult, but you walked through me during the process, and I didn't feel lost at any point, and it really just made sense, the steps that we took together. So yeah, I think if I had to really put something down, that surprised me was how easy it was to actually do.
And we appreciate you, Matthew, as I'm working on how to clone you, so we can make
you
more.
you made it easy as well.
You made it easy.
It was one of the most seamless. Yeah, it was a very seamless process.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's why we refer to you, as well as everyone else we work with, as a publishing partner, right? Because it's a relationship. Like, we can't do our part without you. You can't do your part without us. And when you have that clear communication and that teamwork and the alignment on what we're going out there to achieve, that's where great stuff is created through that process. So as much as you honor us with that, we honor you today, Matthew, with that. You've been a fantastic human being to work with. And once again, I will clone you and make more Matthew Jenkins so we can do that, because it's been an awesome experience working with you, man. So with that being said, Matthew, I want to give you an opportunity. I know we mentioned at the top of the episode, but I want to give you an opportunity. When's the book come out? How can people get it? Do all the things.
Yeah, so it comes out on August 4th. The website is www.beatupbygod.com, and all the information is available there.
Awesome. And once again, we'll put that link down into show notes for y'all. And then if you sign up for that list to get the book, you'll be able to get access to it on that Tuesday for less than $1. And then if you want a physical copy, those will come out on Wednesday. So paperback, hardback, all that fun stuff. And with that being said, Matthew, dude, thank you so much for just pushing through the get this book out there. This is going to be a best helper for so many people, man, because as we've talked about on this episode, church hurt's a real thing, and most people let other people keep them from experiencing the great relationship you can have with God. So I just want to honor you for pushing through the obstacles you've had in your life and getting that book out there, man. It's been a real privilege to be a part of this process with you.
Thank you. It's been great to work with you as well.
All right, Renée, send us off.
You know, like we always say, you can find us, Jonathan and I, on Facebook. Lautermilch, Lautermilch. We're both on there. It's not a very popular name, so I'm the only Renée Lautermilch in the world. That makes it easy. And then
You're
Jonathan
welcome.
is also on LinkedIn, and you can find us anytime at smartpublishingservices.com. Drop us a line. If you have any questions, you can drop it a DM on Facebook, or you can just shoot us an email off our contact form on the website. And if you're writing a book right now, hopefully you will take some of what you heard in this episode and take it to heart, and it'll help you cross the finish line and get it out to the people who need it most. So as we always say, keep writing your story, because the world needs your voice. Until next time.